Hello developers and hello security experts. Today I'm going to present to you Spring Security and how you can secure your web application easily with the help of Spring Boot and Spring Security. This is a presentation for beginners. I will use the latest version of Spring Security, version 6, and I will use the latest version of Spring Boot, which is version 3. But I will present really the basic features for beginners. Nevertheless, even if you are already advanced in the topic of Spring Security, you will see at least how to use the latest versions and how it's done. So maybe this is also interesting for you, but the main focus of this presentation is really for beginners. Okay, so here you see my blog article where I have written everything what I'm going to present to you, so you can read it. I will share the link with you below in the video. And yeah, for the demonstration, I will switch now directly to my IDE. I prepared already a simple web application project with Spring Boot. Yeah, it's, as you can see here, a Cradle project in the latest version 3.0.0 of Spring Boot. I'm using Java 17 as program language, and I have the classic 3 dependencies here in use for, let's say the classic 2 dependencies in use for a simple HTML-based web application. So we need the Spring Boot Starter web dependency and we need the Spring Boot Starter. I choose Timeleaf as HTML template engine. There are of course others which you could use, but here for this demonstration I use Timeleaf. And those other libraries which I included here as dependencies, they are for testing and they are for restarting easily the application server. You don't need it. Well, probably you will need the testing, but in today's presentation, I will not do JUnit based testing. I will just demo everything by starting the application. If you set up your own new Spring Boot project, you will get those dependencies automatically. So first of all, let's start this web application without Spring Security. So here you can see it started on port 8080. So let's switch in my browser. Let's check this URL, localhost port 8080. Yeah, it's really simplest HTML what I'm doing here. I'm just showing some text and I'm offering here a link to trigger a login. But if you click now on it, nothing happens because I didn't implement any login functionality because currently there is no Spring Security in place. So let's change this as the first step. We go back to our Gradle configuration. I prepared it here. We add now as a new dependency the implementation of Spring Boot Starter Security to our project, so that we have Spring Security in the basic configuration in use. I will update my Gradle project so that this new dependency is loaded. I will restart my application server afterwards. So let's do this now. We are restarting it. And in the logs, we should see now that Spring Security is already in use in a basic configuration. And it says that it will secure any request with a bunch of filters. Spring Security is based on filters. So every request which comes to your application goes through a chain of filters. And this chain of filters is really defined here, will secure any request with a set of filters. And you see it's a long list. We have a disable encode URL filter. We have Web Async Manager integration filter, security context holder filter. There are a lot of filters in place. Here, for example, logout filter, that sounds already simple, and as login or logout, here we have a username password authentication filter, and that is probably what we have now added to our application, including a default login page generating filter. Sorry. Here it is. So our new application, which I will reload now, has now a default login page. Yeah. So if I go back to any kind of URL, yeah, it doesn't really matter what I type in here. I can write whatever I want. Spring security, if you just add it by default to your application, it will, yeah, ensure that only logged in users, only authenticated users are allowed to use your application. That is the secure default configuration of Spring Security. And here I have to type in now a username and a password. And I prepared this in my application properties file. So my application properties file has here two properties defined. It's Spring Security username. This is a default, yeah. You can define here any username you want. I choose the username Lex, and we have also a password for this user, and that is defined in the default property Spring Security user password, and the password is demo. So let's check this. User Lex password demo, and if I click on sign in, you see now I might be logged in. Yeah, we see again this page which we had before, but we don't see any details. Yeah, and that is because I didn't pass a user object to this HTML code, which is rendered by Timeleaf. Yeah, so let's do this as a next step so that we really see that there is now a logged in user. I prepared here a user controller. That is a simple model view controller of my application. What we see here, it deals with any kind of request. Yeah, any request is currently handled by the default page. The default page has the name index, so we see here a Timeleaf template called index HTML, and it expects to get a user as input, and then I try to display the user name of the logged in user. So in order to make this happen, yeah, we have to do something here. Yeah, we have to add the user to the model, and we have to use some kind of dependency injection where we get the authenticated principal to this method whenever it's called. Yeah, so let's add this piece of code here. I have to import it and import user details. So user details is a default interface of Spring, which defines the typical things a user needs to have if he is logged in with Spring. And authentication principal annotation makes sure that this user details is filled by Spring Security. And when I call now this get method and the login happened, yeah, then we have a user stored in our session. This is managed by Spring, and then it's put by dependency injection into this variable user, and I can just add it as an object to the page. Yeah, I will not talk now about the details of model view controller and of Timeleaf. Here, the interesting thing is now we get here this user and we hand it over to our page, yeah, and that are then the details of how Timeleaf and how Spring model view controller works. Yeah. So let's check what's happening now. If I reload the application, I'm still logged in as user Lex. Why is it like this? Yeah, it is because we didn't implement a logout feature. We didn't define session handling, and by default, there is a session, and even if our application server is stopped and restarted, this session still exists, and since I logged in before as user Lex, I'm still logged in now. I could open quickly an incognito browser, call our URL, and here you see I'm not logged in, so I have to log in again. I cannot use the application with any URL, doesn't work. I have to log in first, so let's do this, and then you see again the username is displayed. And that is the simplest way to have an authentication handled by Spring Security. It's just about adding the Spring Boot Starter security dependency to your project, and then you can define the username and password with the help of those two attributes in your application properties file, and then you have your first user and the only user which is allowed to use this application. Let's add now some more logic to it. Let's define our own security configuration. I prepared here a configuration file, so I have to enable web security. That means that this class, this configuration class, is now defining how the security filter of my Spring application should be and what should happen. So let's do this. Let's create first a bean called security filter chain. That is the way how we can extend or define our own authentication rules for our web application. So we need this kind of bean. I don't have a good name for it, so let's call it like this. And it is based on a so-called HTTP security object, which gets injected to my class by Spring. And we want this to be a bean. The bean is default Spring behavior, the same as this configuration. With Spring Security, we have just now this add enable web security, and we have here this HTTP security object which is injected. And based on that, we will create now the security filter chain. And therefore, we have to return a security filter chain. And how do we do this in the simplest way? We just build it based on the HTTP security. There might be exceptions, so we have to throw exceptions if something goes wrong. So far this does not much. So let's have now our own rules. And you have seen before, before you had to be logged in to access our application. Let's remove the security now by giving access to anyone. So we have to say authorize HTTP requests. Based on this HTTP security object, we can define the complete behavior of our application. So authorize HTTP requests, and we say any request we give permission to anyone, and that is done with this, with permit all method. Okay, you can read it like this. Based on the HTTP security object, we define how the authorization for the HTTP requests which are incoming are defined. And here we say that any kind of request is always allowed. And then we return a security filter chain by building it. So this HTTP security is some kind of a builder which builds the security filter chain bean. And by having here web security enabled, this bean is used as a part of the security Spring Security filter chain. So if I restart my application, we will see now that still any request is secured, and we would find now here our own security filter chain. But let's try it by just using it instead of reading now logs. If I go back to my basic browser, here I'm still logged in, so we need again a new incognito browser. And here I'm now an anonymous user, and if I try to log in, again, nothing happens because now everyone has directly access to our application. I can write here whatever I want in the URL. I'm getting always access, and since my application is super simple, every request is always responded with this page. We just see if someone is logged in. So based on this, the access control by Spring Security is completely removed. So we have done now also the second point. And now we want to make some kind of real security. And therefore we could start to secure some URLs. And let's say I have now a simple application which has an admin page. So I want to define I want to define which URLs shall be secured. And I say request matchers. And if our request matches the /admin path in the URL, then I want to have an authenticated user. So only logged in users are allowed to access the admin URL of my application, but any other URL is still open to anyone. That is now the new updated security configuration. So let's just store it, and then always my application server restarts. So it's already in place now. And now I don't need the anonymous browser anymore. I can go now to my regular browser where I'm still logged in. And whatever I type in here, 1, 2, 3, I still have access. But when I type in admin, then it is also working because I have a problem defined in my user controller. Sorry for that. I have to add, of course, first the admin page. Otherwise, still everything is redirected to the index page instead of the admin page. So let's add an admin page in our controller. I prepared this simply by having a get mapping on /admin. And then here I'm also getting the user, and I'm passing the user. And then we get here a different page, which is the admin page, index HTML, and admin HTML is the second page. And here we should see some HTML which tells us only users with role admin are allowed to see this page. But since we don't have here now roles in place, we would just see the page, and in case that there is no user, no authenticated user, we would get just an error, because then my timeleaf property will get here an error where I try to read the username of a user which is not logged in. So that would be now the expected behavior. So let's try it again. First of all, I'm still logged in because the session still exists. And if I try to call now the admin URL, I still see this because I'm still logged in here. So if we switch to the incognito browser now and try to call the admin URL, finally we have the error. And here you can see that it is forbidden to call the admin URL if you are not logged in. So if I type in the default page, I'm expected to log in. But currently my application doesn't have a login mechanism. So this is the next thing we have to configure in our own Spring security filter chain. Yeah, because I didn't do this so far. I just said that you have to be authenticated if you want to be the admin. And in my regular browser here, we still have an existing HTTP session. I would have to clean the cookies so that I would have here the same behavior which I have here in my incognito browser. So let's just add now a login functionality to our application. And yeah, this is simply done by using an AND. There are two options. Yeah, I can make more a one chain request based on the HTTP security. Yeah, so we can make a chain of many method calls to configure everything within one statement. And therefore you can use here the method AND. Yeah, then you get back again the HTTP security, and you can use its form login method to just add a login form to your application. Yeah, the other option would be to make here a semicolon and to define it with two statements, yeah, or even more statements. Yeah, so here I add now a form login to this security filter chain builder, which is the HTTP variable. Yeah, and then we have now also a login page added to our own application. Let's check this. I'm again in my incognito browser where I'm currently not logged in. If I call the base URL, yeah, nothing happens. But if I use the login path, this is the default Spring URL for the login. You can see /login, and then we can log in as Lex demo. And then you see I'm logged in. And then I'm also allowed to see the admin page, as you can see here. I'm now logged in the admin page. Okay, this incognito browser doesn't help us now anymore. Now it would be great to do also a logout. Yeah, let's do this. I can use now the AND method to make this chain of comments, yeah, of methods, and to define more. And let's define now logout. And in case that the logout is successful, yeah, you can define more details of things which should happen. Yeah, so we can define a logout success URL. If the logout was successful, yeah, we go back to the index page. There are many other methods which you can use to give more details about how your application should behave in case of logout, like here an add logout handler, and so on. Yeah, there are many possibilities. The same applies for the login. Yeah, here you can also define more things like maybe a login URL or login page. Yeah, you can define a login page. You can define a login processing page. It's highly customizable, but this is currently not in scope of this presentation. Yeah, so now we have just the default login page, and we have a default logout page, which gives a redirect to the index page. Yeah, so that was the add logout task, which I wanted to show you. Sorry. Let's put it here. And the last step is to have more users. But now let's try the login and logout functionality. Now we can use our regular browser, which still has the session. As you can see here, I'm still logged in as user Lex, and I prepared here already a link which points to the default logout form of Spring, which I enabled now in my Spring security filter chain. So I click this link. Then I'm here at the default logout page of the Spring Framework. Are you sure you want to log out? Yes. So I click this button again, and now you can see I'm again the anonymous user. I'm not logged in anymore, and if I click this link, I can log in again. And then I see again I'm logged in as user Lex. And of course, if I'm a logged in user, I have also access here to our admin page, because the only rule for the admin page, as said before, is that you have to be authenticated to see it. Yeah, and any other page can be seen by anyone. Yeah? If you are interested in the topic of users and roles and permissions by these roles, yeah, you can just read the latest blog article which I have written, which is exactly Spring Security version 6, login, logout, and roles. Yeah, so check this blog article if you are interested in how to deal with roles. But for this Spring Security for Beginners presentation, that's all. If you liked my video, please give me a thumb up and subscribe to my channel so that you see all videos which I'm going to present in the future, which will be probably also a video about login, logout, details about this, and roles. Yeah, have a nice day. See you next time.